Okay, we will now return to open session at 6:08 p.m. Mr. Miliband.
Thank you, Madam President. There are no reportable actions for the items listed on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, now we will move on to agenda item 15, potential action item, General Manager Employment Contract regarding fuel reimbursement and travel and training policy.
I think I'm going to turn this one over to Chuck.
I'm just going to suggest that at some date later on, we consider getting the general manager a district vehicle instead of having him pay for fuel in his personal vehicles with the district credit card, and then we reimburse him for mileage, less fuel cost at the end of the month. Seems like it's a cumbersome process, and it would be much easier just to provide him with a district vehicle. So if we can visit that at a later date, that'd be great.
Okay, questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think if we do something like that, we should have all avenues addressed as far as financial. What is that vehicle going to cost versus maybe just a flat dollar amount per month? Or stay as it is? What are the different avenues with the different costs?
I would agree with that also.
Yeah, for that agenda item, we can bring back the different options that you've stated with the costs associated with each one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then as far as the travel and training policy,
Can we address that during the subcommittee meetings we have when we're talking about the personnel policies in the manual?
Yes, we can do that.
If everybody agrees with that, I'm fine with that also.
I don't understand. Is it on the agenda, the other policy that we're talking about, or this is the
policy
future meeting?
The policy is not on the agenda, but
The future meeting?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
you're just referring to G, right? Professional dues and conferences that he goes to,
Correct.
right? So it's in the contract, and I believe since we had skipped a whole year, that it was in the previous evaluation packet that we had already talked about. The things that you attend, the conferences that you go to, the training that you receive, and the organizations that you belong to. So
It is, but if there's additional information that's requested, we can address that in the committee.
great, thank you very much. All right, we are moving back to, I've got to find my 6. All right, moving back to 6A, a Rojas Public Affairs Quarterly Update. Mr. Burtz.
We have representatives from Rojas here tonight. I believe you spent some time with them at Legislative Days in Sacramento this last week, but they're here to give the quarterly update.
Thank you. Hi, thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you, board members, for this opportunity to speak to you of the first quarter report, and then I'm going to dip into the second quarter since you did recently go to Sacramento. So February we started our partnership, and within February we did our onboarding, and we narrowed down to 3 projects that you wanted us to seek funding for, which is the water infrastructure, which is the 20 panels you guys want to replace, the electrical panels, the heli tank, hydro tank, and then the parks and recreations. And in March, we went and made meetings. We met actually Senator Martinez Vallaveres over Zoom, and since she was, just signed in or sworn in, it was nice to have that initial meeting with her, and also with Assembly Member Harry Beating's staff member. That one was a little bit shorter. They were really hectic, busy that day, but I feel that having the initial touch is always a good move with having, especially when there's shift within the district. After In March as well, we started working on the member request letters. Now, member request has not been given like last year, but we always like to prepare. We bring it up within the meetings and ask them for their direction. They always suggest for us to have something ready just in case money becomes available, since the budget is revised in May and then finalized in June. And once we drafted that in March, we actually sent it over to the offices in April. And then we also met a staff member from Carrillo's office in April as well. And within that conversation, it was brought up that if he wanted to come or somebody from his district to come and present at your legislative meeting on June 10th. We're waiting to hear back to see if there was interest for them to come visit, if not, at least through Zoom. And we also, like I said, submitted the member request letters for all 3 of these projects. And in May, as you guys just came back, I know there was, Jaime was with you guys, and he was went with all the offices, which I'm really glad you guys got to meet all legislative offices. And as you can see, it's different office. Some are really hopeful and helpful, and some are doom and gloom. And that's unfortunately where the times are right now, especially with the budget. The May revise from the governor didn't really give us an idea of where we are. It's less deficit than was expected, but still we're still in a deficit. So member requests are, again, not expected to be given this year. But we do have hope within Prop 4. You have all 3 of your projects are great candidates for Prop 4 funding. And we are still speaking, and as you know, when you bring that up. A lot of legislative members don't realize about Prop 4, what's going to happen, how it's going to be distributed, but the more important thing is having these conversations with them and letting them know about your projects. Also with, I believe with Assemblymember Carrillo, there was an opportunity to host a town hall. I believe they wanted to do a combination between Carrillo and Assemblymember Herbirian's office. We'll be reaching out to that staff member and seeing what's the next steps, what is needed so that the district is aware how to move forward, where you would want to host them. And offering that is giving that relationship, because as when we first met, we had an idea that funding was going to be dim, especially on the state level. But to build those relationships takes time for them to meet you, to know what the district is doing, and also inviting them over is relationship building. And so we're going to follow up with the offices for hosting them here as well. I know this was a topic when you visited, is they're not sure how your revenue comes in. And that is not a surprise. A lot of they have no idea how special districts receive their revenue. They may compare you to a city and think that's a lot easier to just raise taxes or raise funds. But I'm gonna work with staff to provide a one-pager that really breaks it down so that they understand where your revenue comes through and why it's especially important for this district to receive funding. And where the challenges are for you to receive funding outside of that. So that is what we have. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. I know it's a lot to do both CSDA events and go see them on your own. So we would suggest if next year you wanted to do a separate, we highly suggest it. We always try to work with budgets, with districts, and to see, since you're going to be in Sacramento anyways for an event, have those meetings, but it can be heavy on you, and then also may not be as effective for you to, I guess, be heavy with the CSDA event. So if that's something you guys can discuss, if next year's budget, as you guys are discussing for next year, having one go to CSDA and also create, we'll be providing weeks that's available for you to have a separate legislative day for you to go out there as well.
One of the state assemblymen happened to mention, I believe it was it Carrillo?
Yes.
I believe he had mentioned a collaboration with other agencies about the Joshua trees.
Yes.
And I think that might be an avenue we'd like to know more about, to solve the issues we have for our park expansion,
Okay.
along with other property that the district has that made the Joshua tree may come as an issue.
Okay.
So I'd like to follow up on that if possible.
Yeah, I'll definitely bring that up when we're doing our follow-ups with, I mean, we'd like to always thank the legislative staffs for their time and pick up also follow-ups. We always try to leave a little bit of breadcrumbs, so there's a reason for us to keep touching base with all the offices. So I'll definitely make sure to bring that up.
That'll make a really good breadcrumb to add in future, down the line someplace to pull them back in.
Yeah,
I know we want our name to come up
right,
whenever they have any of the issues that we deal with, have our name come up to the top of their mind.
exactly, yeah.
Are there any opportunities on the federal level for our projects? What does that look like?
Sorry, I forgot to mention that. We did submit on the Senate side for an earmark. We have, I've reached out to offices. It hasn't been released yet. They haven't selected the projects yet. So we don't have an update, unfortunately, on the federal side for what we submitted, I believe, in, what was it, March. Yeah, we submitted for the earmark, but that is on an option that we're hoping that we can try to get with the federal, being that we didn't apply for, Huffman's office, but we will definitely be following up and give you an update as soon as they provide it for us. Staff did respond. Unfortunately, the staffer that has the response was out of the office.
And I know that Carrillo and the senator were also very interested in coming out and doing a tour. So, that is always open and on the table. And Jaime was listening because I really appreciate the fact that he, out of everything that we heard, and there was a lot, that he zoned in on that, explaining how our finances work.
Right.
Because that's a huge deal. We can't just raise rates, to make more money to do these projects. So really appreciate that.
No, thank you. That is our next step. Thank you for bringing that up. That is our next step, is to have them come visit you. Right now, we'll probably do that after the budget's finalized in June. Start reaching out to see, and we'll work with staff to see in what capacity do you want to host them. Whether it's a tour, whether it's to see some of these where you would like to put the tanks or the panels that are trying to be replaced, or even especially the parks. I think that is a huge impact. I know it's a big ask, and I know that one's a little bit more harder because it's a big money, but the impact that can have in the community to provide those parks, especially with the weather you have up here, it's a good ask though.
Yeah, we need to have that in July when they come out to visit.
Yeah,
I think
you know what?
timing
That's a
would be perfect.
great
We'll go play
idea.
basketball.
That's a great idea.
All right. Any other questions, or?
Just a comment. I've gone to the other legislative days with CSDA and had mixed connections. And where we did sit down with them, and it was wonderful contact. And then other times where we were meeting sort of in the general public area and between their offices with a staff member for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And this was by far a lot more of a connecting visit, and I have to say I'm thankful for that, because we had a lot deeper conversations than we would. And it didn't feel like I was just tied in with other districts in communicating,
Right.
and just what the whole of all districts need. It was I liked that it was unique for us.
Yeah, and I mean, a special, I know with Assemblymember Harry Badian, it wasn't as rainbows and sunshine, but I have to note that he chose to meet with you.
Yeah.
There was a conflict where he had to meet with CSDA or to meet with you, and he's like, I have not spoken to them, I want to meet with them. So he did choose to meet with you, and so when Jaime came back and said, oh, that one was a hard one, I was like, oh, man.
I
But-
actually liked his frankness. He was very direct
Yeah.
and to the point. I appreciate that. And the
Yeah.
fact that we got the full array of responses, the fact that he was straight to the point, it says a lot.
It does, and also we also try to be honest and know and understand, because it is where the times are, especially on the state level, and the deficit and the change of administration has changed a lot with funding, and people are a little bit uncertain of where the funds are. But like I said, like Prop 4, I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm all of the things to just really get into it. We really are trying to reach out to all the potential agencies that will be handling it to get an idea. No one can give us a straight answer, but we're hoping to have a more definite in June.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and we appreciate your flexibility in us changing our schedule around this evening.
Oh, of course, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy to always come and give a report at any time you guys need. It's not
Thank
that
you.
bad of a drive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6B, review and possible adoption of the district's strategic plan update. Mr. Bartz.
Thank you. Jen is going to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bartz. So the staff recommendation is for the board to review and approve the updates to the district's strategic plan. The district's strategic plan, originally adopted on March 16, 2022, is periodically reviewed and updated to ensure it remains aligned with the district's goals and operational priorities. At the May 14, 2025 board meeting, the board reviewed the plan and provided suggested revisions in addition to the recommended staff changes, which I will not read because there are many. And so unless there's any questions.
All right. Any questions, comments? No?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
So where does this go?
It's it's
It's good information. I'm just wondering, where do you find it?
it's available on our website, and then it's an internal document that we reference when we're making decisions.
Yeah, when we bring items to the board for approval or discussion, a lot of times, almost every time, wherever we can, we will have the strategic plan section mentioned in there. This is part of the strategic plan, and this is how it fits in. So we will keep you updated with that when you see agenda items.
All right, with that,
I just want to
Oh.
make a comment, it looks really good.
Oh,
Thank you, I like the look.
all right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the strategic plan.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes. Moving on to 6C, discussion and possible action regarding approval of professional services agreement with TRLS Engineering for construction staking for the Phelan Park enhancement. Mr. Burke.
And thank you. George is going to take this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bartz. As part of the Phelan Park Enhancement Project, the district requires precise construction staking to ensure all improvements are laid out accurately in the field and in accordance with the design plans. This is a critical step in guiding the placement and elevation of the project components throughout the construction phase. Staff had reviewed available providers and identified TRLS Engineering as a qualified and experienced firm. They have provided construction staking for ranges of public infrastructure projects and is familiar with both the site and the project's technical requirements. All work will be performed in accordance with all applicable prevailing wage requirements in compliance with labor code. TRLS Engineering will be responsible for furnishing all necessary labor, equipment, material to complete staking activities, and will provide as-stake documentations as needed for construction management and inspections. The recommendations for the board to approve TRLS Engineering, Inc. to provide construction staking services for the Phelan Park Enhancement Project, not to exceed $34,200.
Thank you.
I just kind of want to also add to that is they were also the design engineers for this project. And on my past experience with construction staking and not working with the engineer or the design, especially the design engineer for this project, there's always a chance that they're going to find some mistakes. Typically, a contractor would look for those. if there's a bust in the survey. And to have the engineer as well, to do the staking as well, will help fix any of those minor mistakes. That will prevent any of those change orders that typically they like to kind of attach on adding cost to the project. So that's just another recommendation, is to involve the engineer who did the design to also make any fixes if necessary.
Okay. Questions? No? Down here? Yeah?
I have a lot of questions. Does this amount require a bid process, or what makes it different?
Well, a part of the additive items in the project, we did get a cost for $40,000 from the contractor for the project. We knew that, with the contractor bringing in his team, as we've seen with the other proposals or bids, it was easier for us to find that cost less effective. That $40,000 was the least cost for each of those 7 bids of that $40,000.
Okay,
So he came at
okay.
at $34,200.
gotcha. So there kind of was a process. Okay. Secondly, on their document, the 80 field crew, is that 80 hours?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
they'll come
because the
out
way I
here
was
to-
reading, I was like, what are we talking here? And why is it $385 an hour? But if
Yeah.
it's several people, I see, okay.
Yeah, there's typically a 2-man crew. They'll be out there when needed, and it'll be phased out during our pre-construction meeting. The contractor will coordinate with the survey firm to kind of coordinate that staking. Also, too, this is also prevailing wage, so typically that
Okay.
kind of pays for a 2-man crew.
Okay, thank you.
Just to kind of give a little more credence to what George said about having the design engineer actually do the staking. I don't know if any of you were on the board when we did the Piñon Hills Park expansion a number of years ago, when we did, there's a walking path, a playground expansion, and a basketball court that was put in. Went through the project, and when the project was all done, the contractor says, well, this was wrong. The concrete was thicker than it had to be because of the staking, but we had the same designer, same engineering firm do the staking, and we walked away with that, and they did not get their, I don't know how much was the change order. It was very expensive.
It was, and it was a fight, and it was a fight that they weren't willing to let go quickly. So, unfortunately, he was a low bidder, and the references checked out, and that's who we chose. There has been some grabbing here and there, and even some of the mistakes that they did not correct was some form of negotiation that it was a struggle, it was a fight.
Yeah.
R.E. Chafee, local, well established, highly recommended and respected. We're not gonna find that kind of challenges with this project, so we're happy with our selection.
All right. Well, with that, I will motion to approve the contract with TRLS Engineering.
And I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 6D, discussion and possible action regarding contracting with Best Drilling and Pump for drilling development and testing of wells 16 and 18.
Thank you. I'm going to pass this one right over to Sean, and these are the wells that we discussed earlier under public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Bartz. In April of this year, the board approved the modification of the district's 10-year CIP plan schedule to align with the changes to the chromium mitigation, water master plan, and government CIP items, including the construction of 2 wells under the new hexavalent chromium MCL, approved by California State Water Resource Control Board in April of last year. That lowered that MCL down to 10 part per billion. The cost of the hexavalent chromium mitigation project is still $5.2 million less than that original $17 million pipeline would have been in 2014 dollars. The mandatory compliance deadline is not a soft deadline. I'd like to emphasize this. The state is not going to work with you. This is a hard deadline. The district could potentially be subject to forfeiture should we encroach that deadline. So that is not a soft target. The state it's not let's make a deal. This is a hard deadline. On May 14th of this year, the district held a proposal review and evaluation using the criteria set forth in the instructions to bidders. The scope of work included the furnishing of all labor, material, transportation, tool supplies, plant equipment, appurtenances, and regulatory permits, unless specifically accepted, necessary to complete the satisfactory drilling, logging, casing, sealing, developing, disinfecting, and testing for service with two gravel envelope wells as specified. The work shall be completed in strict accordance with the technical specifications of well 16 and 18, subject to the terms and conditions of the contract. The notice inviting bids was publicly advertised in accordance with the district's policy and applicable procurement requirements. Publication occurred in the Daily Press newspaper on April 20th and the San Bernardino Sun newspaper on April 17th, as well as the district's website April 29th. 3 bids were received from the following contractors: Lane Christensen, Southwest Pump and Drill, and Best Drilling and Pump. Best Drilling and Pump submitted the lowest responsive and responsible base bid amount in the amount of $1,023,276 per well. And just for reference, the second bid came in at 1.19, followed by Lane Christensen at a base bid of $1.574 million per well. Also like to interject in there, when we bid out well 15s in 2022, it was $1,060,000, and again, we use that as a base analog. So we're seeing that economy and scale in this by the tune of about $40,000 per. So potential savings of about $80,000, again, likening to that savings on the mobilization, demobilization, and economy and scale, because we're doing 2. Should the district choose to contract with Best Drilling, mobilization to the sites can commence even earlier than we had anticipated. So even more good news coming in as early as July, furthering the district's objective of mitigating hexavalent chromium no later than October 1st, 2027. As for those reasons, the staff recommendation is for the board to authorize contracting with Best Drilling and Pump for the drilling, development, and testing of wells number 16 and 18. Attached is some site maps as well as the base bid schedule, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right.
And this is also section 1.1 of the strategic plan.
I know it's a guessing game, but do we know what the water table is there? How deep it is?
So these 2 sites are surrounded by current production wells. Drilling has its own inherent risks. I've seen the same half-acre parcel produce 600 gallons a minute from a failed well and 6,500 from a gold mine. These 2 areas are surrounded by hexavalent chromium-free wells. Well 15 had 1.2 part per billion. We try and stay right in the alluvial fan. There's a sweet spot, and we hypothesize as much as we can. We have found it to be the best production and highest quality areas we have. We also have to weigh infrastructure. Where is the district's current infrastructure for water and getting that water into the distribution system, as well as electric? As much as we don't necessarily like that, water is married to electric. Both of these parcels have 3-phase electric adjacent, as well as distribution assets that will be used to bring that water to customers. So while I cannot guarantee, because it's drilling, there's always an inherent risk, these are the best plausible options the district has.
And the surrounding wells are how deep?
The surrounding well statics are going to be about 350 foot below ground surface. They're drilled to roughly 1,000 foot. Well 15 specific capacities in the high 8s. That is the district's highest specific capacity. One of the wells adjacent, closest to well 16, if we remember back, I think about 8 years now, When we actually turned the test pump on, test pump broke suction before we go water to the surface. We were able to turn that defunct well that was drilled in 1979, so it's older than a few of us in the room anyways.
Not all of us.
We were able to bring that production asset to bear at 175 gallons a minute, and it's chrome-free. Both of these are in really good areas. We have some geotechnical data that was referenced from Mojave, areas that'll perk well, tend to produce well. The geotechnicals are very close to these areas, and they also support drilling in those areas.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a non-water, more of a logistics for this fill station. I see the pattern the trucks have been going, the fence line's in that pattern. Has that changed since that picture? How will it shift for people using that?
That traffic pattern's gonna scooch over.
Okay, so you'll adapt it.
I need a minimum footprint. When we drill, 100 by 100 is getting kind of lean. I can do with about 100 by 100 footprint. Anything less, I've got to have room to get these rigs in and out. I also have to have room to get those tailings out and dried, as well as a finished product having a retention basin so I don't discharge to any ephemeral streams. So it's our plan that that traffic pattern will shift a little bit to the west.
Okay.
I might be able to tighten that fence line by 10 feet, but it's not a magic wand.
This pattern I noticed that would be overlaying each other.
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that October 1st clarification
course.
deadline. My question is really about part of his comment. Is there, well, let me start with this. So these two wells that will be drilled, how long does it take to accomplish a well or two?
That is a great question. So if we were start today, how long does it take to get that production asset online?
All the way.
Electric tends to be one of your larger hiccups. I cannot submit a customer project information sheet to the electric company until I know depth and quantity of water. I wish I could, but we can streamline as much as possible. A year and a half, and that is optimistic. If you were to twist my arm, I would say 2 years because the permitting on the back end. I can write a permit amendment in about 3 days. It takes the state 90 to process it or longer. Right now they have a backlog. Drilling, if they're able to mobilize as soon as July, that's 6 months ahead of what we could have ever have dreamt. I am 100% confident we can have these production assets online before that deadline. There's also a bit of cushion built into that because again, the regulatory, getting your electrical assets, it's a process. And I know formerly we had one director that was not overly thrilled with how long that it took to bring that well online at well 15. But again, that's a process, and that's why we're touching on this even now. And I know some people might not necessarily agree, but in my professional opinion, this is what's best for the district today.
Okay, second question. As far as the dairy is concerned, is it very expensive to test those wells just so we know where we're at, just for future
And
going
I thank
forward?
you for bringing that up. So, and I know Director Snyder's got every bit as much more
Was that your
experience
question?
than I do in this. Dairy's right, first thing we think is nitrates. And there is risks associated with every option. That is a risk associated with that option. That is a former dairy. Dairies make nitrates. Because you don't see nitrates today does not mean that can't change next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now, or 100 years from now. Dairies, we would say it's not if, it's when. Nitrates will be in the groundwater there someday. It might be 1,000 years from now, but that is a scientific certainty. There's other challenges associated with the dairy wells. One of the wells is not equipped with a sanitary seal. There's two methods to go about to equip it with a sanitary seal. Both have risks as well. You can over drill or you can drill and inject. You could collapse the well while you do that. The water quality we have is now a decade-old results. That is not credible. Water quality can change in a day, let alone a decade. So you ask, how much would it be to test those wells? To thoroughly vet each well, to sit a test pump in there, to profile, do everything needed, as well as thoroughly test that aquifer, really pump it at capacity for 72 hours or longer, you're probably about $100,000 a piece.
Wow, really? Okay.
That's if there's not new development needed. Wells don't inherently love sitting idle either. So it's almost certain you have bioscaling. You may have to go in there and redevelop those wells. You may have to run test pumps for weeks with development. It may take chemicals. So that 100,000 might be very conservative if you get in there and find biofouling of the screens. The well game is risk. It could be collapsed and no one would know till we send a camera down there. That's where every option really has pros and cons. There's also other risks associated with that dairy project that could be a rabbit hole that I don't know that I want to go down this evening. But there's other constituents of concern in that area, not just nitrates. So staff thoroughly vetted and evaluated every pro and con. There's also another restriction to that option. Let's say that the wells in the pipeline came out wonderfully. The distribution system starts to have a bit of a bottleneck at site 2. So while I can bring all the water in the world into the distribution system, the current sizes of the lines are just that. I can't change what's in the ground today. So there's about a little over a mile of pipeline. Now I can build you a booster station that overcomes that, but I start to raise velocities in the distribution system, and that inherently has some challenges. So we thoroughly vetted all of these options, and that is why this one is favored in lieu of that pipeline to the dairy, because there's several hurdles that need to be overcome, not just water quality, not just risk, but as well as bringing that water into site 2, what effect does that have on our distribution system, and how do we overcome that last hurdle? This option doesn't have those challenges. It brings this water in at different places, utilizing the infrastructure that's currently there without raising those velocities below that acceptable threshold. I hope that makes sense.
As long as we hit water. Right? Yeah.
Well, Sean, since you're so eloquent about this, we're going to go ahead and touch base on the last option so that I can show that the board has done its due diligence on this selection and this vote. Why wouldn't we want to just drill one well and not both at the same time?
Thank you. That is an excellent point as well. Because bidding it out before us, and this, I wish Wes was on. Wes and I debated to include all of the bids and bid amounts. I wanted to make sure there was I'm complying with district's policy as well as statutory requirements. And ultimately, we chose to include all the bids because bidding it out, both wells at once, we know the capacity we're going to give up at well 12. We've profiled it. So that is a mathematical certainty. We know what we're going to give up at well 10, also a mathematical certainty. We know the demand in the district. One well, should it even come close to the production well 15 produces, will not be enough to meet our max day demand. I'm also the chief operator of our system, so it's my certification on the line. My job is to make sure we navigate the district to meet all of the regulatory compliances. One well would not meet our max day demand for Title 22. That is why this is my professional recommendation to proceed with 2, and then the economics behind that, bidding out both simultaneously saves the district. This is just plunking the holes in the ground, and we're saving $80,000 but versus doing one at a time. So we hope to achieve that same economy and scale by procuring equipment for both simultaneously. Again, we don't know till there's actually bits in the ground and we start seeing those e-logs coming back, but we hope to apply that same economy and scale to both as the project goes on.
Yeah, and also, if, let's say that one did not hit the quality or quantity of water that we're looking for, we have a backup plan. So they're going to start out with the pilot hole, and they're not just installing a well, and we hope there's water in there. They will know before they do the majority of the work, and we do have a backup plan of another site where CEQA is already completed with that.
And I know I've heard somebody's comments, and listening to Don's input, you're not initially risking $1 million. The pilot hole, if we look at the base bid schedule, number 4, you're $157,000 for that borehole. That borehole happens before we go through and ream it and case it. We get E-logs back. So you're not going to have a $1 million duster. You might have a $150,000 duster, but it won't be a $1 million blunder. So when we see those E-logs, we can cross-reference those to well 15s, and we hope to be in the same strata. And that'll start to give you a real good indication of these formations are really looking like the ones we saw just a couple years ago. This is a great spot to be. And it's viable candidate, we proceed reaming and casing the well. But we don't know till we get that pilot hole bored.
Thank you.
I appreciate all that clarification. Thank you.
It's a lot of information, and just to go one small step further, with Republic being down there on the Meadowbrook site, they're either going to be coming to us to use one of the wells down there or drill another well to meet their water supply demands, which will give us a good indication of what the water quality looks like. So we'll have a lot more information within a year on that when they get rolling
right?
down there.
Correct. Staff actually met with Republic last week in preliminary, kind of some high level with their needs. There might be the chance for a looking glass, so to speak. If they proceed, we could not piggyback, but utilize some testing that they would be doing to better understand what's occurring down there on that property.
All right. Any other questions, comments? I appreciate that thorough investigation into this.
I know it's very dynamic, and there's a lot, especially when we get into, basically we're sacrificing some of what we have. We're getting that back, and hoping to basically just meet our demand. We're not coming out of this leaps and bounds ahead or behind the 8 ball.
Okay. All right. Would someone like to motion?
I'll move to approve item 6D and authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Best Drilling and Pump for the development and testing of wells 16 and 18.
Well said, I second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 6E, review and discussion regarding Resolution 2023-04, establishing policies for board member compensation, reimbursement, and ethics training.
Thank you, Madam President. The policy concerning board compensation, reimbursement, and ethics training is reviewed annually and modified as deemed necessary. The board last reviewed the policy on January 10th, 2024, and no changes were made. Should the board desire any modifications, a resolution would be brought back with the modifications at the next board meeting for review and possible adoption. And if you've had a chance to review the resolution 2023-04 and have any comments on that, we'd be open to having that discussion.
All right. I will jump in with one that stood out to me. Item 2.4, budget limits. I know that we have two separate budget limits. We have our stipends, which is 10 a month, and then we have our expenses, which are capped at 5,000. I do appreciate the general manager directing staff to include the chart in the agenda this time that kind of gives us an idea of where we're all at. And I would definitely like to continue to see that. I don't know, monthly, quarterly, whatever anyone thinks, just to kind of keep us on, because I don't want to always have staff have to be the one that tells us what we're doing. I mean, first of all, we should regulate ourselves, but I do appreciate that being in there.
I do have a little historical context too regarding that item 2.4, if you'd like that, what's happened in the past. I don't know if it was ever codified in here, but back to when we were spending an extraordinary amount of time with the adjudication, we had an adjudication committee, and we were in court. We were in Sacramento for days at a time, in Los Angeles for days at a time, and the board determined at that time that if there was somebody on a committee, and we had the adjudication committee, and you were attending a meeting that was regarding that, that would not go against the $5,000 budget each year for the or for the director.
Would that include the legislative committee as well? Because that in there it says that we're going to conferences.
Yeah, that is the board's determination. But it was basically any committee. So if you were on a parks committee and you attended something that was required for parks, then that would not go against that because that was part of the committee duties.
Okay, so I did do a little digging around on the way that Mojave Water has it written out, so it might be something that we might want to not be so ambiguous about and actually put it in there. Mojave Water does state that, you know, the chair of the legislative committee goes and the board president or whoever the board president selects in their stead, and then we could put in 2.4 or wherever we deem appropriate, that if you're on a certain committee, that doesn't count towards your 5,000. That's just a suggestion. That's just how they write it up. Thoughts? Want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Okay. So back to the document that you included on this agenda with the detail, can we also get added in there the stipends year-to-date? It looked like a year-to-date document.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
That would be
I
great.
did see the email. I didn't have time to prepare it
Okay.
before tonight.
I think that would be great. And then secondly, on this $5,000 a year, I did not look, and I should have, as far as the budget is concerned, is that what's allocated? 5 times 5 on?
Yes, so I would have to look at this budget year, but typically what we do, we will look at the prior year budget. And if we think there's going to be something extraordinary, then we will increase it or decrease it accordingly. But I would have to look at that line item for that. Because the budget does not budget for every board member attending every meeting and their 5,000. I can tell you that right now. So we
That's what I
base
was
it on
thinking.
historical usage.
Okay. So if you had a board who typically would not attend conferences as a general rule, that budget line got smaller, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then if you've got a board member that tends to go over that amount, does that mean the next year the budget's just going to increase for that?
It wouldn't necessarily just increase. The board does review the budget prior to coming to the board, starting with the committee. And at that time, changes can be made and that discussion can be had on whether it was extraordinary, just a one-time thing, or whether it should be increased.
Okay. That's all I had on that part. I have some other questions. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I was thinking of what I was going to. Go ahead. Because I know I was going to say something else, but now I got to find it.
Okay, no problem. I had two questions. So the first one is, I guess it has to do with budget again. Maybe I should be asking these questions because I'm on that
Sure.
committee,
No, that's
right? Finance? Okay, so when I look at the finance budget for stipends, it has, I don't have the dollar amount. I do know the dollar amount, but it's not coming out. 36,000. So that accounts for, if we divide it evenly among the board, 5 meetings a month, average. Granted, some months maybe you won't have 5 and some you'll have more. I get that. But in some cases, especially like the president, she has a couple meetings that maybe we don't have, and so she's going to hit 5 every month. Do we need to consider the reviewing that as a line item to see if that needs to be bumped up a little bit? Because we're not going to be in budget for this year.
Right.
And if things continue the way they are, we're not going to be in budget again for next year.
Okay.
And I was just hoping to maybe get that fixed.
It could be done. We're late in the game to do that in the budget package right now.
Okay.
I don't think the dollar item is extraordinary, but, I mean, we could.
We'll see when you give me that year-to-date number.
Yes, okay.
Well, that's something that could be
I'm
addressed
wondering-
mid-year budget,
Yeah,
right?
it could be addressed quarterly or mid-year budget also,
good.
to increase that.
I'm wondering also, because our budget for board dropped so much in 2020 and 21, how much of that is still a wave that we're feeling out in the adjustment to it? I think it even went into 22 a bit, as things started opening back up, the board costs stunk real low, and then as things started opening up, they started expanding. I don't know if we've seen the expansion back to what was prior to 2020.
Because
Yeah,
of
that-
COVID?
that is a
Is that
good
what we're
point.
talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
The COVID shift that happened,
Okay.
to where we all narrowed down to near what basically a board meeting a month, maybe two. And then as things gradually opened up more, it expanded. So I don't know if we're through that entire wave hitting things.
Yeah, and that is a good point. That could be addressed at the quarterly or the 6-month mark at the budget. I can tell you that the budget now is substantially less than it was when the district was formed for the first number of years, because we had 5 board members who were averaging probably 8 to 10 board meetings, or 8 to 10 meetings a month for that. So it is probably 60% of what it was at one point.
Okay, that's good to know.
I have an additional question I want to ask. When was the $5,000 limit set, and how much conferences did it cover versus current conference coverage of where their costs have adjusted to?
That $5,000 limit was in place probably, I'm going to say, 10 years ago. Because that goes back to when we were in the first part of the adjudication with LA County. And that has not been adjusted up to, the conferences are more expensive now than they were in the past. If you look at if you see the financials for the conferences, they're really starting to hit right now. Last year, so for 2024, they still had their conferences already booked and their prices set. And then now they're getting past the post-COVID, and now the prices are starting to go up. That is a valid point.
Okay.
I have 2 more. Keep going? Okay.
No, my turn.
No, okay.
Okay. Sorry, so one last thing, 1.2.1 in the compensation well, again, I take Mojave Water Agency for an example. I pulled up theirs, and not that I want to make more work for anybody, but something that we could take into consideration too is they have A meetings and B meetings. So they have meetings that are automatically, they're approved, compensable, your committee meetings, your board meetings, that sort of thing. Then they have B meetings where they're extras, like, conference with whatever, legal counsel, conference with the general manager, those sort of things that would need to be pre-approved before they were paid out. Now, I know that's, tight, because sometimes we do the meeting first and then we submit our stipend, and then it needs to be approved by the board. We don't want to be doing back and forth, but just something to keep in mind, that's how they're keeping theirs.
Yeah, I could look. I have not seen their policy on that. One thing that the board has done in the past, if Gina wanted to go to a conference and she was at $4,500 and it was going to be $1,500, she would fill out a attendance form or request to go to that, and it would be put in the consent items with the board book. And then if anybody had any questions, they could pull that out, but it would be in there. That way it's pre-approved. Now for a meeting, if you wanted to have a meeting with me tomorrow and
Right.
didn't get it approved today, that's,
Right.
you guys are gonna have to figure out how you want to deal with that.
Yeah.
But we do have a method for doing the pre-approval.
Right, which is why I think that chart is a really good idea.
Okay.
We can see where we're all at as far as stipends and expenditures, and then that way, if that situation does come up, we can handle it, pre-approve it ahead of time.
Okay.
And then that way, we're not doing that, we went over. Yeah.
So as we're looking at how to craft this, is there Is there a feeling for, is the 5,000 sufficient? Do we need to look at some kind of increase on that? And also, do you want to have some way to tie it down for the committees like Mojave had talked about and how that works? If it is, it probably wouldn't get through it tonight, but if you have ideas, you could submit it and then we could bring it back as an action item to determine which applies and which you would like to have in the policy.
Yeah, perhaps we could get an idea on, as far as, costs have gone up. So when we did the 5,000 to what it would look like today, that would be a good place to start. And then as far as, yes, like, if we're going to erase the amount, I don't know that we would have a problem with it, but we could put some wording in there as far as legislative chair, legislative days, park and rec. I mean, I don't think I've ever been to a park and rec conference, but, we could add that wording.
There was one
there
in
as
San
well.
Diego last week,
Yeah.
right? I think.
Well, I
something
can't
there's
be
one in-
everywhere at once.
like- Just saying. It was the day after. You
I
would have cut
know.
home and left again.
I know.
Replicate yourself, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want, take down your notes, send them in, and we'll kind of compile it and see how we can at least have a discussion on that and then work it into. We might have to have another meeting to determine what we want to put in before we actually have the attorney review it and look at it that way.
And I want to say that I know I'm the one that's over. I'll say it. And it's because of the fact that being on the legislative committee, in the details of the bullet points of what we're supposed to be following is going to a meeting and to different things and communicating with all the other people. So that's why I didn't.
Okay.
And sorry if I assumed wrong.
So can I bring up my last two?
Yes.
Or do I have to do it in writing?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, according to AB 1234, Section 3, Article 2.3,
don't have that memorized.
I know, I'm going to tell you what it says. I don't have it memorized either. But it says reasonable rates for travel, meals, and lodging. And our resolution covers two of those, but really doesn't cover the travel. I think we need to somehow word that in there appropriately. To give you an example, Deborah, I'm not trying to pick on you. Here we go. So, let's just say legislative days. For me to get to Sacramento, it costs $381.87. That's for the airport parking, the mileage, the fare to get there. If I were to drive my own vehicle, it would have been $576.80. Well, that seems ridiculous to do that versus the other. But a rental car, so you pick up a rental car, you got the mileage to pick up, drop off, you got fuel, you got parking, you got an extra hotel stay. It definitely had to cost more than $400. So I think that reasonable needs to be in there.
Yeah, in the past, and I didn't read through this right now at the moment, but it was the lower of the amount. But then we also had Director Farlander who liked to drive to Sacramento instead of flying. So they did approve that in the past too, that was,
We
they
have a
just.
technical problem for myself. I don't have a real ID and they now require it. On top of it, I only have one working vehicle within my home and I'm not going to leave my house with no vehicle.
Okay?
So you're just saying, look at the wording for reasonable
Yeah.
and be,
I think we lost that
Specific.
portion of the wording from AB 1234
Okay.
in this document.
Okay. We will look at that.
okay. Anything down here? No? No?
No, the
Is that
last
all
one
for
I'll
that
do
one?
in writing. Okay.
No, if you got a question, I'm happy to.
You're good? All right, thank you very much. All right, so we will move on to 6F, review and discussion regarding ordinance 2020-01, setting compensation for the district's board of directors.
Okay, I could read through this, but I think everybody's probably already read it and ready for discussion. Actually, I can give some historical context too. So, from time to time, I sound like an ex-attorney that we have. From time to time, the board would set the amount for the compensation for meetings. And what that would do is kind of reset the clock. So if you went from $100 to $120 and it was over a period of 8 years, it would start the clock again on how much you could increase it each year on top of that. And so the reasoning that the board had used in the past was to kind of stop the clock, reset it, And that way you don't have like a $75 increase in what the dollar amount is for compensation for meetings. And if you look at the water code 2202, it can be not to exceed 5% for each calendar year. So if you had 5 years and you didn't do anything, it could go up 25%. If you went that 5 years and you said, okay, I'm going to bump it up 10%, then it starts the clock at that 5% mark again, if that makes any sense.
All right. Comment, question?
We
you wanna go?
Last reset was 2019, correct?
2020?
Yeah, 2020,
Okay.
in February 19th of 2020.
Oh, there it is, yeah.
So it's been 5 years, so it could, by law, go up 25%.
Okay.
So how does this fit in our budget? If we were to make a change, we would just change it in the quarter, on a quarterly?
Yeah, we could, the budget, for all intents and purposes, is set for this year, but we can also make budget adjustments. There will be items that aren't spent, and I think with the budget, the size of the districts, it would not put that in itself would not put the district over budget going through the year, and we could make adjustments.
So if I understood what you said, if we were to change it, say, to 140, that would like start a new 5% going forward?
That's correct.
Okay.
It wouldn't necessarily.
Doesn't matter
make
what
it
the dollar
5%,
amount-
but the potential for 5%.
Up to?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it has Mojave Water Agency. They're always a great comparison. They're 197 meeting in Hellendale, or 150. Why are you looking at me?
So here's the thing, we don't have to do anything. We can leave it at 120, or we have the option to raise it to 140, or a maximum of 150. Thoughts?
150, 315.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a little bit over
So
that.
the
So
150
I
would be the half.
cannot, in good conscience, do anything that is not a round number.
So the 150 would actually, I think, properly be the amount it would be at 25% of 120. If
a little
you do
bit
the
less
math.
than that, yeah.
Yeah, it's about the range we'd be in, so.
All right, not everybody be quiet. Thoughts? Director
I just have a
Schneider?
hard time giving myself a raise, so I'm just going to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to what the board wants to do in terms of raising the rates of our compensation. Our compensation is less than probably 1% of our annual budget by far. So it's not going to be a great impact. I think, what's our total budget, 9 million?
Yeah, right around 10 million.
So you do the math, it's minuscule. So we do spend time here doing different things. If you look at what somebody our level's benefited rate is, I think 150 is a fair compensation amount per meeting. So I'm good with that.
Thank you.
I appreciate those comments because really, you're not just working when you're here. It takes hours to go through the agenda. So it's an interesting thought.
It does. And if they saw your notes, they would know how hard you work. You're welcome.
That's why she's on the finance committee.
I love it.
You're handling the learning curve real well. I'm very pleased. There's a bit of one, though.
Chuck?
I'm kind of where Greg is. I could go either way with it. I'm okay with it if we go up, and I'm okay keeping it where it's at.
And that wouldn't be done tonight. We would bring that back.
Right. So, I don't want to be the,
He is right.
He is right.
It's very nominal. I wasn't even thinking that way. There is some that goes into just attending a meeting quite a bit. So, and secondly, if we want people to run for this position, maybe the dollar amount does matter in that case,
Well, when working at a fast food place is now $20 an hour, times that by 8, you're at 160 for a day's worth of fast food work.
True. All right, so.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we go to 150. I really wanted to say 140.
I know you did.
150. There we go.
I agree.
I'll second that.
So do we need to do a whole?
Yeah,
no,
so we will bring this back.
We're going to
Yeah,
bring it back,
Yeah, we'll bring
right?
this back.
Okay. Got it.
So just a consensus is good on that.
Thank you.
So to confirm, you wanted to go to 150 so we could write it up that way?
Yeah.
And then even once it goes to the next step, it takes, what, 2 months, is it afterwards or something like that? 60 days or something?
Yeah, I'll
before it goes
find
to
this- there's
there's
a certain-
timeline it goes
yeah.
before things kick in.
One more thing, with this increase, I really would like to stay within our budget, so just keep that in mind.
The overall budget or the,
So our budget.
okay.
All right, moving on to item 6G, update on district projects. Mr. Cardenas,
Muchas gracias.
de nada.
I think I can start with the park enhancement project. We have signed contracts with R.E. Chafee, and we're kind of ready to schedule a pre-construction meeting here real soon. And they're finishing up a project, and they could be available probably in the next few weeks. So we may be looking in June, mid-June, late June, before we break ground. On a handout, a revised handout, there was a correction in the expenditures on the breakdown for the enhancement project. Initially, there was for 2024, it read about 150,000. We're actually at 96,000. So that's just a correction for the expenditures on the project. Civic Center project, the agreement is in the hands of CPM. They should be signing that tomorrow, and we'll have that. We'll have a kickoff meeting here soon with all the consultants. We're working with the consultants to provide all the approved plans so they can begin the constructability review, as well as the construction cost review and the front-end documents review. So we're kind of moving forward with that. We just met with them, I believe it was yesterday, and they're ready to get this project up and running. So no hesitation. They know what they're doing, and they're on top of a lot of the of what's going on in the construction world. So looking forward to getting that going here real soon. So with that, I have nothing further to report unless you have any questions. No. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7, committee reports, engineering. We didn't meet.
We have nothing to report. We have not met.
All right, finance.
Last time we met was May 6th, and we're going to meet again on July 15th.
Perfect. Legislative.
We attended, well, not the legislative committee, sadly Chuck could not make it, but our president and Director Mills joined me, and we visited 3 representatives, a senator and 2 assemblymen, and I feel it went really well. They now know who we are, and we're on their map, and hopefully our name will come to the top of their thoughts when any of the things that involve us happen. And I have to say, you two made wonderful partners in this. It was, we made a good team, I think. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Park and Rec, nothing new since the last time we met and updated. Waste and recycling.
Yeah, we're scheduled to meet June 17th, and then we'll report out after that.
Perfect, thank you. All right, item 8, staff and general managers report. Anything to add?
I have nothing to add tonight.
Number 9, directors reports. Director Schneider?
I have nothing to report.
Director Mills?
I have nothing to report. I'm going to do the write-up as I'm supposed to.
Excellent. Director Phillip, Vice President Phillips, sorry.
I don't mind being director.
I'm
too.
tired.
Both work. I included my write-up for April in there. And just to add the legislative days that we attended that, and it went real well.
Perfect, thank you. Director Hayes?
I have nothing to report.
All right, and I did report on the ASB CSD dinner. That report is included, and piggyback on legislative days, and I have it written up, and I will include that in next month's report. So we will move on to 10, correspondence and information. Ms. Williams?
Yes, we don't really have much new stuff, the same as last month. I just wanted to note for the Earth Day art contest, we did extend it because we didn't have enough entries. So they have till the 30th, right? 30th, so Friday, to get entries in if you know anybody or. And then our free tire day, that's coming up June 14th. And then our summer activity flyers are also in here.
Excellent, thank you. All right, moving on to 11, review of action items. Were there any prior meeting action items?
We did have some prior ones that were completed.
Okay, and current meeting action items?
Yes, I got my right page here, sorry. We have to bring back an item regarding the general manager's district vehicle with options. To add the stipends year-to-date report in addition to the expenses one. And then to start the ordinance process for the ordinance 2020-01 to increase it to 150.
Great, thank you.
I wanted to note too, we are working on the AI policy. We haven't forgotten about it, so we have a draft that we're reviewing.
I figured that might take some time to refine, unique it for our district.
We're using AI to write it.
AI to write its own policy. That's awesome.
That was nice, yeah, that was nice. All right, moving on to 12, agenda for next meeting, June 11th. Does anybody have anything they would like to add?
Do we have to put the correspondence from the last, do we need to do that? Put it on the agenda?
It'll be in the minutes.
That's all we have to do? Because they wanted a discussion on it.
No, we're not doing that. No. Okay. To note, June 11th meeting, Vice President Phillips will need to be running that meeting, but I will be in attendance on Zoom, so I will get you the appropriate information to put that on the agenda. And with no further business before the board, we will adjourn at 7:20 p.m. Thank you.